Charlie, you're free to proceed.
Great, thank you, Max. This is the meeting of the Environment Committee of the City of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware.
Hold on 1 second, Charlie. I apologize. We had to wait 1 second. Where it go? Thank you.
Okay. Good morning. This is Charlie Garlow. I'm the chair of the Environment Committee, an advisory committee to the Board of Commissioners of the City of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, calling this meeting to order. First item of business is the roll call to make sure everyone knows who is here. Since I can see everyone on this Zoom, Ringmaster, I don't need to call out your name, but I can see that we have Heather Metz and Mary Peck and Catherine Burgwin and Catherine Taylor Smith and Nettie Green and Stuart Martins, and our special guest, Commissioner Dick Byrne, has joined us this time. And Womack is also in the room. We have no guests or visitors, as I'm told. So I think that's all we have. The next item of business is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting, which was way back in March. Thank you very much, Catherine.
Thank you, Catherine.
Excellent work on your part. And we sent out a copy of the minutes for everybody to peruse in advance. Does anybody have any questions or corrections or anything for the minutes? None. I will presume that they are approved as prepared. Thank you, Catherine, for that. Next item of business is normally correspondence, but I don't know that we have any sent in to us. So let's get right down to business. We're hoping
we had one from Heather.
Oh, well, I guess they did list that as Heather's correspondence as opposed to part of her presentation on the 5G issue here today. But yes, thank you, Catherine. We're going to definitely consider her correspondence back and forth with city fathers and others. On the agenda that I put together, and I think is on the agenda which Ann sent out to you, the first discussion was possible continuation of our discussion on the proposal for single-use plastic products, followed by 5G, followed by whatever else we want to have on the agenda, climate action plan, etc. But since we were sort of close to getting that ball across the finish line with the single-use plastic products, I thought we might try to snatch a victory there if we can. I checked out the draft proposal, which I put together on single-use plastic, talked about making a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners to adopt code provisions that would do several things: ban the use of styrofoam cups and carry-out clamshells and other single-use styrofoam products, to ban the use of plastic drinking straws, cups, lids, etc. for food establishments, thinking that they would be able to substitute either paper straws or not have to have straws at all. After all, we got along without straws for a long time in this country. We cannot ban the use of plastic bags, as we were informed by our legal counsel, but we can put a 10% fee on them in order to discourage their use and give an incentive for people to switch to reusable bags. We were going to ban the helium balloon releases, be considered littering, I guess, if nothing else. And we were going to require or request, one or the other, the city staff and commissioners to use reusable water bottles rather than buying cases of bottled water. And we had a rationale drafted up there. I hope you've got pretty much all of that there in front of you to look at some examples of other cities and towns that have done very well. Let me start off the discussion by asking Dick if you have a reaction to these. I think we've missed you at a couple of the meetings back in March or something to get your feel on how you think the commissioners might react if we were to put this proposal forward as it's been drafted or with modifications.
Well, I think in general that there will be a positive reaction. It has been a while since commissioners have had an opportunity to think about some of these things kind of extraneous to COVID-19 and to closing down businesses and trying to reopen and being consistent with the governor's messages and so on. And so it will take bringing some of it back up. I think it'll be a positive discussion. Prior to doing that, Charlie and committee, and this I can't remember because it has been a while, and I did miss maybe the February and March meeting. It'll be important to get review by Glenn, our city solicitor, to make sure that there aren't any problems that would be inconsistent with state law or other ordinances within the city. But I think, the bottom line is that this is the direction that the world is going, that the United States is going. Definitely, we want to set a model in the state of Delaware. So I think it'll be viewed quite positively.
Great.
I know that, Mark.
And that was an affirmative comment.
Affirmative.
I'm going to try to put myself on mute whenever that starts. But I was just going to add to the conversation that I spoke with Dan Slagle from Main Street, Rehoboth, this morning, again, to trying to set up a meeting to see if we could meet with him to get his thoughts, feedback, or whatever, because as I recall, that was one of the assignments we made to me from way back when. I've tried to meet with Carol from the Chamber of Commerce, and she gave me this, oh my God, I'm just so up to here with the meetings. I'm after meeting after meeting, cheek by jowl, and couldn't even meet with us. Dan, on the other hand, seemed to feel that he was able to meet and would be glad to meet, and sounded relatively supportive with single-use plastics restrictions idea.
I have a comment regarding what we're going through now. I mean, our direction should not change, but the climate of things has changed since we have. I mean, how will that affect how well it's received? I guess, Dick, I'm asking you as far as what we're going through with COVID. I mean, I think we're all aware of the fact that the use of plastics has only increased since the outbreak. My question is, I think we should just proceed with our recommendations because that didn't change and we still need it more than ever, but how will this affect things?
Yeah, Janet, good comments and questions from my perspective. I'm not sure. The city has continued with weekly recycling pickup at all residences. We have not gone forward with recycling on the boardwalk like we had planned prior to the pandemic. We just don't have the staff power. We don't have the resources. We have a diminished city budget where we're having to reallocate funds to some places we had not planned on. And we certainly have had less revenue. And so, the things that cost money right now that are new, if they're not being responsive to the pandemic and to public health, and I know in the big picture, we can talk about this being critical to public health, of course, but not in the immediate. So, I think those are things to be sensitive to, but I don't think that means that we don't continue to work on them. I mean, I would encourage and challenge all of you to continue to work at these things and to not hesitate in bringing things forward to the commissioners. But particularly if they're asking for new monetary resources, to be very sensitive to that right now.
Okay.
It'll be interesting to see how Charlie, your talks go with the businesses, because a lot of businesses are saying they don't want people to bring in their own bags and reusable stuff. And I mean, some of the places I shop have gone backwards on this, definitely. And they say due to COVID-19, which is, debatable whether that's a good way to go, but that seems to be what the businesses are doing.
Yeah, I even had the other day, I went in to get something and from one of the local stores, and I was told I couldn't use my reusable bag, even though I did not hand it to the cashier. I had it on my arm, and I was taking the stuff from the belt and putting it in my bag. She said, "Oh, you're not allowed to do that. We're not allowed to have that." I said, "I'm not asking you to fill it. I'm filling it myself."
Yeah.
And I said, "Just put it back in my cart. I'll take it out to my car and do it there." So thank you. So yes.
Dick, are you all meeting? Are the commissioners meeting at this point, like monthly meetings?
Yes, we have been having what we've called special meetings every Tuesday for, oh gosh, 6, 7, maybe 8 weeks that have dealt primarily with the response to COVID-19. So we're doing that almost every Tuesday, late afternoon.
Okay.
And then we are continuing with our twice a month meetings. So, for example, on this coming Monday, which is what, July 7th, whatever it is. We have our Monday morning workshop at 9 a.m. and then a week and a half later on Friday, the 17th, we will have our regular voting meeting.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I mean, the short answer is yes. Now,
So you could consider this. You could.
yes. Oh, yes. We're considering things beyond
Mhm.
beyond things that are related to COVID. Absolutely.
I wanted to say that it's very interesting to be here in Vermont because today, the July the 1st, Vermont is charging 10 cents for paper. Well, plastic bags are banned today. And they're charging 10 cents for paper bags. And this is in the middle of COVID. And this law is taking effect today. And just another thing, just with Rehoboth, I have seen, I've been to the beach a number of times, been in the water, so on, but just huge pieces of, I guess they're freezers, people's, ice freezers, which have all the little teeny beads. In fact, when I saw the first one, I thought, this is a great piece of coral. No. It was not coral. It was this big a piece of the little bead, styrofoam.
Can I interrupt for just a second? I see Kevin is trying to call in on the other line. Max, can you open that telephone line so Kevin can get in?
I'm in.
Oh, Kevin, you were with us. Oh, good.
Yes, I got in about 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes.
Oh, okay, great. I'm sorry.
I don't want to be the time bearer, but I am going to be the time bearer. We're already at 11:42, and I think we only have an hour. Is that correct, Charlie?
Thank you for cracking the whip. Yes.
You're welcome. I'm getting really good at that.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I think we can pitch this proposal as something that will benefit the finances of the city if the 10-cent fee is to be split between merchants and the city, 50-50, 40-60, or whatever. That might make it even more palatable to the commissioners. You got an opinion on that?
That would be helpful.
Dick, Byrne, do you think that is a...
Yeah. Well, I mean, would it be helpful to the revenue of the city? Yeah, of course, any revenue is helpful. Is there a good rationale to have money come back to the city? I mean, that's what I think we would need to, convince folks that there's a reason for money to come back to the city. Is the city expending resources to help make the new policy work?
Would they have any enforcement from anybody? I don't know.
Yeah, and so I think, I'm just saying that I think that needs to be thought through because, no one's in a mood right now for something that could be translated as kind of a new tax.
Right.
And I think we just need to be careful about that, about where these dollars go in a time where particularly our local businesses on Main Street are hurting. Some are not opening. Some have had to reclose now temporarily. There's still a great many people out of work and so on and so forth. So I think we need to be very, very careful about that, particularly if it could be perceived as yet another tax on folks that's going to come to the city government.
Maybe we could pitch it as a clean energy boost to the economy because the 10 cents may very well be going back to the merchants.
Yeah, and that may be best.
Mhm,
And not have any of the money go to the city at all. Shows
mhm.
trying to help businesses to the
Yeah,
maximum extent.
right.
Or leave that open to the commissioners to decide one way or the other, whether
Yeah.
there be any split.
I just think you all need to think that through real carefully and have a very strong rationale, as to where the money would go and why, so that I mean, it's going to be somewhat of a sell job. And I'm not saying slow it down, don't do it, just, do it as thoroughly, do the homework as well as you can, base it on research and science and good practice of what's happened in other communities.
Good. Well, it sounds like we have next on the to be done
Can I
on this
say one
topic.
thing about a draft that went into our notes does not, on 3, it just says ban the use of plastic bags at all businesses. It does not indicate the 10-cent fee.
That's,
So just take a look at that before we resubmit.
I will revise that, Catherine. Thank you, to make it 10 cents and get rid of the ban on plastic bags because we've already been told we can't.
And Charlie, at some point, I think you want to, after the committee has worked on this and is satisfied, make sure that you get a meeting with the city solicitor and let him, really critique this in terms of the way an attorney's going to look at this and probably punch some holes in it.
Okay, well, should we then not try to move forward on this until we get the pieces clarified and not take a vote on this today or anything?
I think I would make one comment on that. We have worked with Glenn, and I think we are pretty much in the framework of what he said we can do legally. And now it's just kind of split up, kind of a political question. But we, short of drafting language, which is his job, I guess, we pretty much, we had Glenn come and speak to us quite a bit about it. And I think Charlie has pretty much complied with all the restrictions that Glenn had said. So I don't think we need to do that again. I think we have a good grip on the legal part, but
yeah, Mary, I just wasn't aware of what had
Yeah.
happened with the solicitor.
yeah.
Yeah, so then we would just review it, Charlie, and submit it. Is that what you're saying, Mary?
Yeah, I think, I think their only question is how far we want to go, and we can't, everything that Charlie has here, I think Glenn said we can legally do.
Well, do we want to have a motion and a vote on moving this forward, assuming that Glenn takes another second look at it and says fine?
Yeah.
I'll entertain such a motion. Catherine, you're raising your hand.
I motion that we do that.
I second.
From Janet. All in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. This is passed. Thank you very much. Moving right along, Catherine would like us to crack the whip to 5G. We're so pleased to see that you're keeping up the good fight, keeping communications going between you and the city. Can you bring us up to speed on the latest and where you would like to see us go?
Thanks, guys. Has anybody had a chance to read the paper that was attached with the meeting agenda?
Yes.
Okay. To kind of summarize where we started, where we are, where we're going. So this is a follow-up to the commissioners and mayor's request that they made to us on February 21st for the Environment Committee to come up with a proposal for managing wireless communications facilities in the city. The main idea was we were going to deal with permitting, with placement, with regulations, and with amendments to, if needed, amendments to the current ordinance. Sort of the framework that we started with. The goal was, as the things we're doing right now, public safety, safety of our residents, health and wellness of our residents was the goal in beginning all of this. So that's the main focus. Some of the secondary things are we wanted to minimize any visual effects that these wireless communications facilities would have in our community. I don't know if any of you guys have been down to Ocean City and seen some of the facilities they have down there, but that's probably not the direction that most of us in Rehoboth want to go.
We saw the pictures you sent us so that we get an idea of it, even if we haven't gone to Ocean City.
Yeah. So the other concern is that we want to minimize any impacts to residents' property values. So if one of these were to go up in front of someone's house, it could negatively impact their property value, where somebody down the street wouldn't have the same impact. So that's an issue. And another thing that I think has always been really important, and I really applauded the elections last year and the year before by the issue of transparency, because I think everybody really supports that, and I do think it's really important. But the way that the framework is set up right now, if somebody applies for a wireless communication facility in a residential area, there's no way for the impacted property owners to know that that happened. They might find out by reading the Cape Gazette, or they might just go up in front of their house. So transparency was really important, and I wanted to put something in there so that residents would have some way of being notified and still be able to comply with the government regulations. So in my recommendations, which hopefully you guys have had a chance to read, I have a suggestion for a setback on residential properties. In other words, you would not be able to put your wireless communications facility within so many feet of a residential dwelling. This is definitely controversial. There are 2 lawsuits right now in federal court and an additional one in the District of Columbia that are dealing with this issue. We don't know how it's going to come in. So that may have to be revised, but if you think it's important, you should ask for it. And then, as we take the recommendation to the commissioners, they can decide what they want to do with that. But I thought it was still important enough to include it. If you don't ask for it, you won't get it type of thing. So I did include that in there. And again, based on the outcome of the lawsuit, that may be something that we can include in our ordinance. I also wanted to put a provision in there so that when these wireless communications facilities are being planned and once they're put in operation, that there is actual testing being done by a certified radio frequency engineer to say that the radio frequency emissions meet, even though the federal standards are great, but they're at least meeting those minimum federal standards that we have now, with, of course, the hope that those safety standards are going to be studied further and updated. So, but right now, the way that the process is structured, there is no actual testing that's required. So on the ones that we have in the city right now, nobody knows if they meet the federal standards. I mean, according to the manufacturer, they do, but he didn't, the manufacturer doesn't know what other ones are there. The radio frequency can build on itself. So none of that actual in-place testing has been done. So I thought that was really, really important. That's a really, really big safety issue. And again, to have that done by an independent party, not the installer, and it shouldn't be at the city's expense. It should be done by the provider at the provider's expense by an independent party, just like you would do anything else, right? And also in the recommendation to add a provision to notify residents. So there's actually, this is a little bit off topic, but there's actually a diagnosed medical condition where people are actually diagnosed with being sensitive to radio frequency. And under the Americans with Disabilities Act, you have the right to be protected from being exposed to that. And if somebody is going to plan to put something in front of your house, that's something you need to know ahead of time so that you can exercise your rights under the Americans with Disabilities Act to be protected from that. But the way it's set up right now, a property owner wouldn't necessarily know that something was going on. So again, with transparency, I felt like that was really important. And how do we do this? How do we accomplish all this? Update our ordinance, develop a permit application. So there should be an actual written application that anybody who wants to put a wireless communication facility in our town has to fill out. And that will, some of those items are in the recommendation, detailed items of those. We also need to update our sitting and design standards so that there are some real standards for what these things are supposed to look like. So we don't end up with a hodgepodge of poles with wires and things hanging out all over the place. And, it's really important to me, and I imagine it's really important to you guys to protect the aesthetics of our city. That's why people come here, because it's a beautiful place. And so it's really important. And the other really important issue that I thought was worth doing is for the town of Rehoboth to write a letter to the state of Delaware, as has been done in New York and New Hampshire, saying we have concerns about the safety, and we would like for you to test. We would like for you guys to do some safety testing on this radio frequency, find out, what the impact could possibly be on the people that live in its proximity. In the short term, so we're still under the state of emergency. Is that correct, Commissioner Burns?
That's correct, yes.
So the way it's written right now is that under Homeland Security, that any request for wireless communications facilities should not be considered by the city while we're still under the state of emergency. So we don't have to worry about it right now. But 2 other jurisdictions, one in Tennessee and Easton, Connecticut, have both passed temporary measures to protect their residents. So I think in Easton it was within 100 feet. You can't put anything within 100 feet of a residential dwelling until the first of the year. So the goal there is to say, we want you to do the safety testing. We want to make sure it's safe. We're under a state of emergency. The city needs time to catch up, to get its feet back under it before we can consider these things. So I think it was a pretty smart move on those 2 cities' parts to do that. One of them was indefinitely. The other one was just until the first of the year. So that was just something I was suggesting that the city might want to consider as a temporary measure, because I was a little concerned that what was going to happen is when the state of emergency is over, that the city is going to get 30 applications and we wouldn't have had the chance to catch up. And we all know about the shot clock. So I just would hate for us to end up with, 30 of these placed throughout the city without giving the city the chance to look at it.
Right.
So
Heather, just a question, and thanks for all this good information. In your June 1st letter to the city and the one that's attached to the agenda, are these recommendations all laid out? I didn't make time this morning to go back and look at that June 1st letter.
I don't think all of my recommendations are in the
They're not.
They're all in the attachment to this meeting, though.
Okay.
They are not in the attachment to this meeting, in the letter.
Linked.
Yeah, well, I think what's in the attachment to the meeting agenda is your June 1st
Oh, okay. It's not the recommendation.
letter.
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought it was the recommendation. I can certainly.
But they should be, or you need to get them back out to us.
Okay, so I'll resend that to you, and then.
I thought I said.
Is that your CD? Is that your CDP on 325? Was that all those recommendations, that very long document that was sent out?
The CDP was separate. The
Okay.
recommendations just say at the heading, they say Rehoboth Beach Environment Committee proposal for recommendations to wireless communications facilities.
I'm not sure that I have that either. So that would be good if we got that again.
Yeah. Oh, I can definitely send that around for sure.
I thought I sent forward to Ann Womack for inclusion here your June 19th.
Yes, June 19th. I thought that it was in there. Yeah. But Commissioner Byrne, I'll send it directly to you.
This is June 1st. The only thing that got in was
Yeah.
your June 1st letter.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the agenda now, and it's the email received June 1st.
Okay, and that's definitely not everything that I'm talking about now.
Right.
Right.
And then, because as a consequence of that letter, then on looks like June 14th, the solicitor responded to you.
Correct.
Right, okay. So, all of that really, ideally should be included here.
So my question for you, Heather, would be that's wonderful work you're doing. You're staying on top of everything. How do we respond to potential arguments that Glenn, our lawyer, might bring up? Like, oh yeah, those places up there in Connecticut might have passed something, but all those things they passed, that's not complying with the federal law. They're just sort of testing the waters or being rascal rogues folks who are pushing the edge of the envelope. What would be our response to that sort of thought?
Well, again, this is just a recommendation for now. And when we get the results of the 2 lawsuits and then the additional lawsuit, we'll know more about how that proceeds. I will also say that there are many other jurisdictions that have proximity, the numbers of feet between the dwelling and the wireless communications facility. And those aren't the kinds of things that have been challenged by the FCC. The FCC is really more interested in, there are some communities that were trying to charge $5,000 for permit application fees. And those were the ones that were getting really sticky and causing a lot of problems. So, I think the general understanding is that there are differences in communities and that we are kind of a unique community. So I think that they would give us some leeway on that, but it all remains to be seen how the lawsuits will play out.
Yeah, well, from Glenn's June 14 letter back to you, I really didn't get a very positive feeling. I know he made some comments. There's some flexibility here. It wasn't quite clear to me what is the flexibility and what is the you can't go there sort of comment that he was making.
I think the thing he was saying you can't go there is that you can't put a proximal, you can't, you have to be so many feet from a residential dwelling. But that's, of course, according to the Cohen Law Group, who that's their opinion. For certain, they're entitled to their opinion. But there are, of course, many other opinions and many other things being done throughout the country with the same law. So.
Yeah, but just to put that in context, that is the consulting group that the city has paid a lot of money to over a number of years, not just this immediate situation, to advise the city of Rehoboth Beach on all of this. So just to keep that in mind, that while I trust your information that there are other opinions out there. This is the group the city has paid to guide the city.
And when I suggested the particular thing that he was responding to, which was the 75 feet, again, that was just for a temporary, temporary plan, just to get us from here to the next stage after the state of emergency. And at that stage, we can kind of discuss what works best for the city. There are also a lot of other considerations: the aesthetics, the property values.
Yes.
Things that probably need to be addressed in the CDP, like putting our utilities underground, just in general. So, it's a bigger issue for sure.
Yes.
But definitely some other considerations.
Well, I found most appealing to me the part about transparency and having an opportunity for the public to either know about these things and or comment on them. That seems like something that everybody ought to be able to salute, I would think, and that doesn't necessarily run afoul of anything I saw in the Glenn's response. I don't know. Is that anybody else get a feeling along that lines or different areas? I'll shut up.
I don't remember seeing Glenn's response. Did you send that out to us? So I only remember seeing your June 1st, not your June 4th. And I don't remember seeing Glenn's response either.
Well, let me say this. Heather, can you send out to everybody again all the June 14th, June 19th, and your proposal in a proposal format, not just the emails back and forth, so that we can make sure we get the right one? I may have goofed it up by not giving Ann the right connection or something, but.
Commissioner Byrne, you did receive the recommendations, or you did not?
It's a good question. I think I did, but there's been so much information and there's been so many other things that have been, I just have to say that have been so immediate.
I completely understand.
Yeah, so I probably received it and I probably didn't give it the attention that it deserves given the immediacy of so many other things we're dealing with. Yeah. So it would be good to get it back in front of all of us.
Excuse me, Charlie.
Yes, Ann.
I only received the one from June 1st. I just sent it over to you to acknowledge that was the only one I received.
Well, it must have been my fault, and I apologize. And we're going to get that figured out and straight. Thanks.
That's fine. As soon as you can, please send it to me, and then I will re-embed it into the agenda with the correct one that you would like to have.
Great. That'll be part of the public record that way.
Yes.
Good. Thanks. So Heather, what do you think should be our next steps? You're going to send us more material. Should we be doing anything in advance other than waiting for court cases to get decided or something?
Well, I'd love for you guys to all, read it in detail and ask any questions or make any suggested changes, any new ideas that you have, and I'd be happy to incorporate those in the recommendation. But hopefully by our next meeting, we'll be able to vote to move it forward to the commissioners, because it's probably going to need an amount of work there as well, which I'm happy to work with all the commissioners on that as well. Developing an application document is going to be a big chunk of work, getting that document, up to what we really need to protect the city. So the sooner we get that moving along, the better. But I'd love your guys' input.
Well, here's some more input. I'd like the idea of the application as well, because that helps to inform the public about what's really being discussed. So getting an application form, getting that all, as part of the public record for what's going to happen, aids the public in understanding to the extent that they can understand it. I mean, if I looked at that stuff, I'd probably go, what? It's complicated.
Well,
But
some of it is pretty standard. One of the things I'm going to recommend in the application is that the provider include real photographs with imposed what the structure will look like, so that you can see what it looks like in the surrounding area. Just using technology to kind of put it in there, and being able for the public to be able to see that and part of the application, I think will really help people, because they can visually, they don't have to imagine what it's going to look like. They can visually see it on an application. I think that will
I can well imagine that they may very well be improving the image or what it looks like, because the photos that you sent us were pretty ugly. That's one of my favorite oxymorons. Pretty. And it seems to me only reasonable. They ought to make it look just like a Tesla, super slick and attractive, without being this ugly thing with wires coming out all over the place. And this process, it seems to me, might help to push them in that direction, or mandate that they go in that direction, so that we would have at least that problem of visual ugliness resolved.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys remember when I first talked about this, that, it's always in the back of my mind that it's not just AT&T that we have now. It's Verizon is coming next, and then it's going to be T-Mobile, and then it's going to be some other. The issue I'm dealing with back in Virginia is that there are actually independent companies that just build these towers to sell the spaces to all of the providers, and they just do it to make money. They just build these things to make money. They don't care who goes on them or where they go, but they're protected under these FCC rules too. So we have to really, they are definitely do not have our best interest when they put these things up. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, can be ugly as
And
possible.
there, just to let you know, and indeed I did receive
Oh, good.
the June 19th. You sent it at 8:14 a.m., June 19th. You sent it to Charlie, Sharon Lynn, myself, and Commissioner Schlosser. So I do have it, but I think it'd be good for everyone on the committee to see.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure what the rules
thank you.
were about the committee, and I know that you're our committee representative, you and Lisa, so I sent them
Right.
to you.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
But I do have it. Just found it on my phone here.
Okay, and when you have the time, I'd love any of your input. We can put it in there and
Right.
get it in shape.
Good.
And
Sure.
also, will you be able to, Heather, or will Charlie be able to send us what Glenn had to say about it? Is that a big email or just a little thing?
Letter.
June 14th, the email from Glenn, I think, is the one that.
Yeah, it was just a short letter.
It was quick, short?
Short letter.
Any other questions from other members of our august panel here? If not, thank you very much, Heather, for continuing to fight the good fight and keeping us up to date on that. And I wish I knew more so that I can help more, but glad to have you on the team. I see Kevin, did you have a comment or thought?
No.
Okay, your number was highlighted over there. Sometimes if you just scratch your chin, it'll highlight your. Okay, moving on to the next topics. I was thinking that we might get a chance today to talk about some of the things which, Kevin, you may be interested in, the draft proposal on climate action plan. And there was also the theory that we might get a chance to talk somewhat about the gardens/wildlife proposal, which would talk about pesticides and rain gardens and butterfly friendly things, and protecting wildlife at the same time that we're protecting impervious surfaces as opposed to impervious surfaces. All those things might be in one general category. But if I may, I'll start off with the proposal that I drafted up about climate action plan, which I hope all of you had a chance to take a look at or receive, or maybe we can look at it now, I don't know. Talked about basically trying to follow in the footsteps of some other people who've done this before us. It's not like we're breaking new ground or anything. Milton, Newark, Delaware have got DNREC to develop a plan, and that we would have some low-hanging fruit to go after first, including turning off lights and idling vehicles when not needed. Every time I go by the Royal Farms, there's somebody out there idling their truck. It just throws me off. And it's already
Yeah, Charlie, I think last meeting, I said, why don't we put together a ordinance proposal for anti-idling, and then Ann said, oh, we already have one, but then she corrected it and said, no, it was just a resolution that we will be an anti-idling city. But I think that's something that would be kind of you could do very easily, is ask the city to adopt an anti-idling ordinance and similar to what Newark has.
Yeah, didn't we decide, Mary, that even the state of Delaware already has an anti-idling law that applies statewide?
No, I think the state's law is enforced by DNREC, and there was something about it, now I'm forgetting, but it wasn't, it didn't cover everything. It only covered certain vehicles above a certain size or something like that, like, big truck, 18-wheel trucks or something like that. Whereas just individual, the Newark has one, it applies to all cars and even police cars, unless they're performing, an emergency response, where they have to leave it idling. So I think we could probably benefit from just having our own ordinance. And that way, if you see that down at the Royal Farms, you can call the local police and they can give a ticket. So
yeah, Mary, I just checked. You're right. The state of Delaware, it's only for vehicles over 8,500 pounds.
Yeah.
Idling law is a $500 fine, or $50 to $500 fine, but that's just if you're over 8,500 pounds, which cars weigh.
Yeah.
That's probably.
Well, that's only one of the things that would go into a climate action plan. We were going to maybe enter into a power purchase agreement with a solar farm developer, like it's been done at other places here in Delaware, to set up interim milestones, sort of like a dashboard, so that we can keep track of how we're doing on reducing our carbon footprint, rather than just, making, steady state. That's not good enough. So I don't know if anybody had looked at that and had any thoughts on it. I know, Kevin, you were my main man on solar energy. Do you have any feedback for us?
No, I don't. Sorry.
Okay. Are there other people who have thoughts about the draft proposal on climate action?
I was thinking about it a little bit, and especially the low-hanging fruit. And I think that maybe this idea about how individual properties manage their water might be something that would be included in that, because that's use of water is a big deal. And when it gets into our streets, but then also the idea of native plants, again, that's not just a good thing for the birds and the bees, but it's overall a better sustainable native gardening practice. So, and those are kind of low-hanging fruits, and I thought maybe that would be a good place for those where those could go in, instead of maybe something separate on those issues. Just a thought.
Hey, well, as John Muir, founder of the Sierra Club, said, when you look at everything's connected.
Right.
So we could have the native plants in with gardening and wildlife proposal, which hasn't yet been drafted, or we could sneak it in here with climate action too, because it probably has some impact on climate as well. Good thought. Thank you.
And maybe it doesn't have to necessarily be addressed with the climate action plan if we're going to look at it in a different place. But the mention of it, I think, might be important. Any other thoughts? Anybody have any other thoughts? Or we could separate it. My fear is that we're going to get into so many separate areas that we lose focus. And if,
Mhm.
if this is our main focus, climate action, it might be worth having all of those things at least mentioned in this plan, and whether we divide it up into subcommittees to
Yeah.
a moot point. And actually, that's not honestly, my recommendation. That is what Ernie said to me. He said, sounds like you guys are all over the board with what you want to do. And that's fine because they're all really important, but maybe having a central document that's guiding, okay, we've addressed this, we've addressed this, we've addressed that. You following me?
Good. I'm with you on not getting ourselves stretched too thin with 91 different subjects.
Well, just to jump in, I mean, that is the nature of a plan, right?
Mhm.
That you put together a plan with goals, strategies, and then timelines. And the timeline isn't, we do it all right now, lay it out in logical, sequential kind of an order over the next, whatever, 2, 3, 24 months, 36 months.
Mhm.
Right. So if this
that,
is our guiding principle, this, this climate action plan is really what the Environment Committee uses as our guiding principle, then we can always go back to it and say, have we addressed this? Have we addressed that? You know
If
what I
we
mean?
wanted to do it as comprehensively as Newark, when they got their grant, it took them several years to come up with it, and it involved a lot of public events and input. And I don't know if we want to do something that major, but they got the grant, and then they had various public opportunities, and then took the time to really digest a lot of stuff and came up with, like, I think it might even be a 20-year plan or something for the city. And they had a lot of goals in there, and it's like a long-term thing. So or we could just do something much more simple where this group just states some goals. But
I think it's a good idea to, like right now, make a suggestion, a very broad suggestion, just like we did with recycling, and just like we did with paper and plastic bags. And now it's becoming, okay, we're going to enforce this. This is going to be the way it's going to be in Rehoboth. So I think that could be part of the plan too. It's like, now it's a suggestion. This is a plan. This is good. But I think we're pretty capable of biting off a lot and applying for a grant, just like Newark. I mean, and now in COVID, we could take the time to do that. So.
Well, as Mary suggests, it may be taking several years for all these hearings and things to get the whole plan in place.
Mhm.
I agree that it may very well take a lot of effort on our parts. This could be the big Lollapalooza for our team, along with others. But I'm in it for the long term myself. I'm not dead yet. I'm on the Python movie. Yeah.
Who knows?
Is there a downside to actually including those two items in this? I mean, we've talked about them and they're important to us. Is there a downside to including them? Does it get too complicated, or does it help us streamline our intent?
I think those things were just meant to be like for example, including but not limited to. Here's some things, but the entire plan would be hopefully more comprehensive. We would make steady progress to reduce our carbon footprint here in the city and get down to net zero carbon by 2050 or some date. What a lot of other people have done.
So let me ask another question, just because I'm a sometimes slowly gal and I don't get everything really quickly. Do you think that our proposal on climate action is our main proposal as an environment committee? And if it is, then I think this doesn't hit all the areas that we want to hit. But if I'm looking at it incorrectly, then just tell me I'm looking at it incorrectly.
I don't think you're incorrect. I think that you're right that there's a lot more to it. I mean, if you look at the bigger picture of climate, pollution, the carbon dioxide pollution comes from a number of different sources. Transportation, that's
Right.
not mentioned really in this write-up that I put in here. Industrial and commercial emissions. Not a lot of the industrial things happening here in Rehoboth, but commercial certainly. Yeah, there's residential homes may need to have energy audits, or requiring whenever a home is sold that it have an energy audit, or if it's rented out that it have an energy audit. There are lots of other details that would go into a climate action to address.
I think that's a great question, Catherine, because I think Newark might have brought in their plan enough that it was more of an environmental green kind of plan, which of course climate is a huge part of. And they have a lot of things in there like, tree cover goals, planting more trees, which is related to climate, but other things as well. And so that is a good point. How broad do we want the plan? And it could just be everything that's environmentally related and not just specific, it's all interconnected anyways.
Right.
But yeah.
And I think part of the reason that I'm asking this question is I think at me as a person, I'm starting to feel more focused about us and, who we, as a committee, who we are. And maybe by looking at the Milton plan and the Newark plan, I always, I used to say this where I work, just tell me what you want me to do and I'll be really good at it, I promise. But if you have me make up what I'm trying to do, then I'm not really sure that you'll get a good product. And I haven't always felt that we as a committee are really focused as to what our true plan is. And I kind of feel like this is our opportunity, is to come up with a really good plan. And then even if we weren't here for the long run, somebody could come and say, that's what these guys were up to.
Yeah.
At the same note, we don't want to just sound like, they're little Johnny one note. That's all they know is climate, climate, climate. I mean, 5G has really not a lot to do with climate, but I think it's also a very important topic. Single-use plastic.
Rename it. We don't have to call it a climate action plan then, if you think that would make people think we were one-noters.
That's a good suggestion. Just rename what you're calling it.
Anyway, we can talk about this later, but I just feel all these lower hanging fruit things, which would be so easy for people to take on versus, I tried to put solar in my house. I can't do it. I can't afford it, but I don't have enough sun. That would give them some opportunities to feel like they're making a difference and not have to make big changes. So that's all.
Yeah. And also, as far as having more focus, I think with these plans, maybe we should start thinking, what's the next step?
Right.
Should we say to the city, why don't you try and pursue a grant? And if you get the grant, then we can decide what we can do with it, or, what's the next step?
I think that'd be a great idea, Mary. But if we could also at the same time say in that proposal, and while we're waiting for the grant to be awarded to us, I don't know, maybe the state is broke too, and they don't have a lot of grant money hanging around. We know
everybody's broke right now.
Right. We might have to wait for a while on that, and we could say, meanwhile, while we're waiting for it, let's pass the anti-idling thing, or let's do some of these, for instances, the low-hanging fruit that can be done right now and would save money right now.
Yeah. And I don't think we're going to be able to get any kind of grant unless we're, like Catherine says, very clear about what we want. So I think we need to be very clear about what we want and then perhaps request a grant.
Well, I think it's sort of the opposite, Nettie. You have to see what are the grants and what do they say you can have them for. And you kind of have to have somebody, and I know the city, this has some people that are, and Evan is one, that are pretty good at doing this stuff, and see what is the money, what are the possibilities, and what do you have to show to get this money, and we can help with that, but it's really up to the city staff to decide what they want to apply for, and you know, we can kind of direct them. Like I know that the state gave Newark a grant. Well, what department was that, and how did they get that? So, you know, yeah.
Right, we could tailor our requests for the grant to the grant.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
because we are doing so much. I'm sure there's something that a lot of this would apply to. And so knowing what a grant is already existing for helps us greatly.
Right.
Same time, you should know that the state of Delaware is developing a climate action plan also. And they
Yeah.
have had some hearings or some town halls or whatever to get people's input on what ought to be in the climate action plan. I have not yet seen a draft of the climate action plan for the state of Delaware yet, but I'm hoping that they come out with one and we can provide input into that on their specifics. But we might look to that state plan to incorporate elements of what they have and what we have, so that we're helping the state's effort. We're working teamwork. I'm for teamwork.
Yeah.
Have you seen
Charlie,
the
excuse me, Charlie, are you aware if there's a citizens group in the state that's informing whoever at the state level is putting this plan together?
That was me, Brooklyn. No, that's my dog. The answer is okay. There's the answer is that the DNREC people that I've spoken to, like Susan Love with their climate energy section, has been holding all sorts of outreach efforts. They've come here to Rehoboth Beach and they've spoken at community events like the Green Drinks program, or they've been at Rascal meetings, which is what does Rascal stand for? Somebody help me out.
Regional, I don't know.
RASC.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
Anyway, they have done a lot of outreach. They are trying to be open and transparent.
And also they have a website that still has an open opportunity for people to submit comments online as well. They're trying really hard. I will say DNREC's trying very hard to get public input on this thing, but they had to drop, stuff because of COVID-19, postpone some of the actual in-person meetings. But I think Susan Love, she's kind of at the top of that group, and she's going to be speaking soon about where they are and updating everybody. So,
but I don't think they have an actual panel of citizens like us advising.
No, they don't have an advisory committee right now.
I guess they're just presuming everybody is advising them by putting comments up.
Rascal said, go ahead. Sorry, I just know what Rascal stands for now.
Oh, go ahead.
Resilient and Sustainable Communities League.
That's a gathering of state and local and city officials and other interested citizens, and they have periodic conferences. They all get together somewhere.
Right.
The other thing that kind of tipped me about maybe getting some of the lower hanging fruit, when I was on the City of Rehoboth website, I found this document that talks about keeping stormwater clean, and it says nothing about where how you manage your water. It says nothing about native per se. It says plant right for your site, practice smart watering. So the details, I think, on some things that are already in the mission, we could help really.
Absolutely.
We can enhance what they have there already.
Right. So
yeah,
I think what I'm trying to propose is that maybe either if this climate action plan is not our environment committee plan, that maybe we take a little bit of time perhaps, or we just make this our environmental, because when I try to talk to people about what our plan is, I sort of say, well, we're doing this and we're doing that, we're doing this. Feeling like maybe a little bit more concise structure might be worth it. And if I'm completely off base, everybody just tell me I'm off base.
Well, you see that we ought to have focus, but also variety is the spice of life. So
right.
We're doing some of the single-use plastic stuff that's making litter ugliness, and it affects.
And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just hoping that we don't lose sight of things that we have. Whatever. Anyway, that's enough.
You also should know that there was a bill in the state legislature to encourage solar and wind and other clean renewable stuff called the Renewable Portfolio Standard. We currently have a law in the state books, 25% of our electricity must come from clean energy sources by the year 2025. And we're on pace to we're still making good progress on making that successfully. But the bill would have increased the mandated percentage to 40% of our electricity would have to come from clean energy by the year 2035. So the theory is we have to pick up the pace here a little more if we're going to get to zero carbon by 2050. That bill, last I heard, didn't pass. It was late on the table. Next year, it's a real disappointment because there was a lot of letter writing and emailing, calling and everything to get it passed. Bummer. But in that bill, it had a provision, which I hope we get passed next year, talking about community solar, in which communities like ours could get together and say, hey, why don't we all buy or lease some farmland out there and put solar panels all over it and let them grow butterfly-friendly flowers in between the panels or something that's nice rather than just concrete or gravel or whatever, and make electricity that we would sell to ourselves here in Rehoboth. And other communities could do the same, or a church group could get together and do it. It's called sometimes community solar gardens, as if you had a community garden where everybody was raising their crops and they get the benefit from the bounty or the harvest. Here we would be benefiting from the harvest of solar energy from our community solar garden. Anyway, hasn't passed yet, so fingers crossed for the future, but I would think or hope that that would be one of the things we might include in a climate action plan. Getting power locally so that we're more resilient. If ever there were something knocked out, the power goes out, we would have our own source of power. We might even have battery backup. Now I'm really starting to get excited here talking about all this stuff. Sorry.
Don't be sorry.
Okay, so any other thoughts on the climate action plan or related topics?
What's our plan on the climate action plan?
What is our plan on the climate action plan? I'm going to revise what I wrote based on the comments here today and see if we can consider it more in depth at our next August.
Great.
I know.
Has anybody seen the Milton or the Newark plans?
I have.
Yeah.
Have them, or are they easy to, can you get them on the webpage and stuff like that?
Yeah, you know, in the very beginning, when we first had our first meeting, I had sent that to everybody, that link. And I can do that again. But yeah.
Well, I get noted that we're running out of time here. And so I would just say that I was hoping that someone might want to take the bull by the horns and draft up a proposal on wildlife gardens, etc., which would include, you know, permeable, impermeable, water handling, native plants, bird-friendly, bee-friendly, butterfly-friendly stuff. Does anybody want to volunteer to be a person to take a crack at drafting that up, or would you like me to do that?
Is that, you mean something that could be a city regulation, or just something?
It could be a
to
city
look at?
proposal, which is a large part of it could be voluntary educational project, or it could be part of it would be mandatory, like don't use Roundup on any city gardens, or nasty pesticide, chlorpyrifos, or whatever the other nasty.
Glyphosate.
Yeah, and so this kind of goes back to what I've been saying. I'm very interested in that, but I wouldn't want to write up a proposal without looking at a proposal. It's like, writing up a protocol for physical therapy when there's already one written. Why would I want to do that? So I'm not smart enough to do that. So
come on.
that's why I would like to see what other people are thinking and doing and going, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Montgomery County, Maryland has an excellent amount of information on their website. That's a good place to start. But obviously their county is huge compared to ours, but they had a lot of really good information.
I'm curious to see what Milton's doing. I'm not volunteering to write this up, but I think my proposal would be, let's wait. Let's see what Milton's doing, something that's more part of, easier to replicate than Montgomery County. And then go from there instead of, I don't want to start from, reinventing the wheel if somebody's already thought about this.
I try not. Nettie, go ahead.
Why don't we all, before the August meeting, do a little bit of research about what some other people are doing and then come together in August to talk about it.
Okay. Or if you want to in advance, send me something via email and I'll try to put it into a draft proposal on gardens and wildlife.
Mhm.
I note that we're 5 past our time period. I'm amazed that Max has not cut us off beforehand. Because I know they have to get ready for their next group that's or maybe not, I don't know. For whatever reason, we're limited to an hour. But I think that we've done a bang-up job of getting good things accomplished in 1 hour.
Right.
Hopefully on our August meeting, if we're still virtual, we might be able to get a little more time. We won't have to talk quite so quickly. But I think that we did a pretty good job here so far. Any last comments or thoughts?
Thank you, Charlie, for keeping us from being dead in the water all these months, because
Really?
you have really, if it wasn't for your constant pushing the city, we probably wouldn't even be doing it today.
Thank you.
Do you have something you want to say, Stuart?
Yeah, we had talked, and I'm glad to see that we passed the single-use plastic, but we might want to circulate that among us as the final version, just to make sure, because we had talked in the past about an educational component. We talked about a green hero reward for the businesses that do something, but we never put it in writing what that award for those stickers what constitutes that from these businesses to help them get a green sticker. And because we're trying to help them get some revenue, and now more than ever because of what's going on, we all should be focused on not only cleaning up the environment, cleaning up plastics, but helping them improve their revenue to the point we can.
Good point, Stuart. I think I drafted on something like that in another version of this draft proposal. Version control, sometimes you get the wrong version. Educational component, green hero.
Date them. Put a date on them.
Good point. Any other last thoughts or comments for the benefit of the the group here? Commissioner Byrne, you got any words of wisdom for us?
No, I don't think words of wisdom. I'm just really pleased that you're all back at it, that we're able to do this. And I would, just highly encourage you to make sure you're on the calendar at least every month. I would go for, an hour and a half request next time, because these are complex, comprehensive topics, and you can't just slide over them and do all of this in 60 minutes and have an opportunity for everyone to have some real input as well. So, an hour and a half, or maybe even request 2 hours. I would certainly, do my best to support that. And I think, it's important to continue to move ahead. And please don't go away and feel frustrated today that, you're not at the point where ideally you would like to be, or where some other communities are. We've had a very serious disruption in the flow of our work, and now we're getting back at it. And I think we can make progress. So thank you all for making time for this. Very important.
Thank you for joining. Yeah.
Of course.
Sign off. So
The secretary would note that we were adjourning this meeting at 12:38. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.